Jonathan Schuster, call me Jono, it's his friend's a nickname. And I'm Executive Director for the Entrepreneurial Standards Forum and also a developer. It's interesting, when you start a series of businesses with other partners who are largely marketing focused, you're yourself an entrepreneur, but you happen to be the only person with a software background, guess who gets to do development, and that's me. So I'm in sort of this dual role here in Mix and Two. The reason I'm doing this presentation this morning is you walk into the Denver Boulder Drupal Users Group and you look at the crowd through one lens and what you see is a whole bunch of geeks, like me. If you look at it in another lens, you see a whole bunch of entrepreneurs. Easily half the membership, I believe, in the Denver Boulder Drupal Users Group are in one form or another entrepreneurs, either in business for themselves or a partner in a business. So this idea of entrepreneurship and Drupal seem to be a real natural. So what I would like to do this morning or this afternoon is talk a little bit about what the Entrepreneurial Standards Forum has been doing to shed light on the process of entrepreneurship. There's a sort of a myth out there that says that entrepreneurship is somehow an innate talent. It can't be taught. You either have it or you don't. And I don't buy into that. Part of the reason that myth is there is because entrepreneurship is very rarely measured. And we have come up with a way of measuring just what a successful entrepreneur looks like. And we've turned that around and thanks to Drupal, and put that back out onto our website in the form of a benchmark survey that anybody can come to our site and use to be able to benchmark their business idea and see how it measures up. So this is what we're going to talk about this morning, this afternoon. So I want to talk about the idea of benchmarking entrepreneurship. We're going to take a look at a benchmark survey in practice. Actually, Mike Hostetler, Mountaintop Software, is agreed to be a guinea pig for this session. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the patterns we see in the data and what does this mean to you if you're considering starting your own business. So let me ask that question. How many of you are thinking of starting your own business? Okay. How many of you, that's easily half. How many of you have already started and are operating your own business? Okay. That's just about everybody. Okay. How many of you have started 2 businesses? 3? 4? 4 more? Okay, very good. How many of you have started a business and have failed? All right, you are to be congratulated because you took the risk. And for those of you that failed, how many of you learned something new in the process? That's what it's all about. Lather, rinse, repeat. Okay. So, motivation. When you're starting your own business, particularly for the first time, you face a real problem. There's little hard data. There's very few people out there that are actually measuring what entrepreneurial success factors looks like. You get a plethora of advice. You go into any bookstore, you can find all kinds of books about how I started my business and became a bazillionaire, and you can too. Okay. The problem with a lot of the advice out there, particularly the trade books and so forth, is it's largely very situational based. So you read, say, in the Denver Business Journal how WebRoot came out of nowhere and they became phenomenally successful, and you go build something that looks all like WebRoot, and it doesn't work for you. And there's so many other factors that are running around behind the scenes that aren't surfaced in the trade books that will drive you either to success or failure. So just replicating what another business doesn't help you. The other problem we have is that there is so much advice out there on what to do to start a business that the average entrepreneur is awash in information. There's just more of it than you can absorb. So one of the things we've seen time and time again is how do you filter out that excess information? Well, we tend to filter it out based upon our own biases. What that means is that when I read a book and I'm thinking about starting a business and I read a whole bunch of books, the one that resonates with me the most is the one that tells me, yeah, the things that I thought I ought to be doing are really what worked for them, therefore that's what I ought to be doing. Well, that's kind of a do loop. If my instincts are good, that'll work for you. But if your instincts aren't good, that's not going to work for you. It'll actually work against you. My first company we started beginning in 2001, lousy timing for a software company, by the way. And we made some phenomenally dumb decisions. Now the company survived and it still exists today. But for example, we spent a lot of money on attorneys putting together a stock option program for our development staff. Why? Because all successful technology companies have stock option programs for their developers, right? We were doing this at a time when we were shrinking our development force because the economy was changing. So we spent probably an embarrassing amount of money on a stock would spend it on going and finding customers when you were done like that. So anyway, dynamic markets. You look at what Red Root did in 1995, 96, whatever the case may be, tried to replicate it in 2009. The same rules aren't going to apply. We're in a time of discontinuous change in our economy, probably in society as well. If you ever read Charles Handy, continuous change is when the past serves as a useful predictor of the future. And if something gets bigger, you just simply scale up your response. Discontinuous change is a time when the old rules no longer apply. You have to figure out what the new rules are. Okay? That makes it hard to simply go back to what somebody else did, project it forward and say, this is what I ought to do. That's the bad news. The good news behind discontinuous change is that's also when barriers to entry for new businesses fall. It's a great time to be an entrepreneur. That's a whole other picture. The other trend and motivation for me is the economy becoming more entrepreneurial. Even within big companies, to hold on to a job and do well in a job, your business is just bought by somebody else, you've got to justify your existence within the company. People have to behave in an entrepreneurial fashion just about everywhere now. The economy looks more like my great-grandfather's economy. My great-grandfather was founded the town bank in Belmont, Pennsylvania. His father built the town mill. My great-grandmother on the other side was the town grocer. Okay, they succeeded in life by finding a need in their community and serving their community. And that's more and more what this economy is looking at. It's not my dad's economy. It's not corporate America or anything like that. We're moving into an entrepreneurial economy. But our major institutions don't teach us how to be entrepreneurs. In fact, a lot of them beat it out of you. You spend any time in a large company sitting in cubicles and you're taught to specialize. An entrepreneur is a generalist. You go to get an MBA. Here I go, and so all the MBAs in the room, my apology, but an MBA teaches you how to look at numbers. It doesn't really teach you how to run a business. Okay? I can tell you, I know Mayan farmers in Guatemala have got better entrepreneurial instincts than some multi-millionaires that I know here in town. And it has to do with how you've been trained. And our economy generally does not teach entrepreneurship well. Enough of that. So here's what we've tried to do. Like everything else in life, entrepreneurship falls on a bell curve. If you look at entrepreneurial practices, left and right, somewhere there's a sweet spot where the most number of entrepreneurs are being successful. Okay? And it's that sweet spot we're looking for. The myth that you sort of see is the stuff that makes the presses, or the YouTubes, the Twitters, the things that come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, boom, these kids are buying Lear jets, they're rolling in dough, it came from nowhere. What do? If you try to replicate that success, if you try to be one of those, your odds are really against you. In fact, the odds of being able to do one of those, you're probably better to take your investment money and go up to Central City and spend it in slot machines a little bit. Okay? Don't aim to be the next whiz kid. Successful entrepreneurship comes from doing it the old-fashioned way, finding patterns of success, building a step at a time. So what we set out to find out is, can we find a yardstick? Can we figure out some kind of a measure that lets us see how close to this sweet spot on the bell curve we are? Okay? And such a yardstick ought to be based upon patterns established in other successful businesses. So what we did is we came up with a list of 15 characteristics in 3 categories relating to the company's market strategy, their relationship with investors. Now, every company needs an investment to get on its feet. Okay, sometimes it's big, sometimes it's small, sometimes it's outside. A lot of times it's internal. So when I talk about investment, I'm not talking about the usual going out to VCs and angels or anything like that. It's what you put in the business to generate a return. And we looked at characteristics of the entrepreneur and the team. And we started taking measurements. We started doing this about 3 years ago. We rolled this up onto a Google site. And we've probably got data on over 1,000 companies at this point. And if we look at those companies that we really looked at and analyzed, if you look at the scores on those questions, they break out. Let me back up a second. If you look at the companies we've measured, about a third of them have been successful, have met our success metrics, which is within a 3-year time frame. You put in your investment, get your first dollar back on it, you start generating revenue, you go cash flow positive. In other words, your daily expenses, your monthly expenses exceed